Yep.
Hello.
Uh-huh.
Hey, yeah, so I am a Latter-day Saint. I'm a Mormon, right? And I had a couple questions for you. Something that I find interesting is if your whole concept is built off of creation out of nothing, right? Which we believe in creation ex materia, that sort of stuff. So if you have creation out of nothing, God basically just creates. Would you say that God creates whatever He wants, however He wants? Would that be your definition of how
Well,
God
so
creates?
hold on. So just from the outset, like if you believe in creation out of material, you're already a polytheist because you have another eternal thing alongside God. So how many eternal uncreateds do you have?
Well, I mean, if you want to define something being eternal as making that polytheism.
Well, if God didn't create it, is it eternal?
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, it's literally in our scripture, right? That there is.
You mean? Hold on. So you're saying your scripture? You're talking about the Book of Mormon?
No, it's on the Book of Mormon and the Doctrine and Covenants, right? So in DC 93, that's where you would go to find that, right? So DC 93, it says element is eternal. It says the spirit of man was in the beginning with God.
Right. So you're
right.
So that's your position, and I'm asking you, how are you not a polytheist if there's two uncreated eternals?
Well, I mean, we wouldn't define that as polytheism because I mean, you're coming from that there has to be this one simple thing that is God, right? And that simple thing is eternal, right? That's how you define it, and we would just define God is the person
so redefine the words.
The universe
so just redefine the words
to
right. So redefine the words to make the position work. So there's an eternal, uncreated thing alongside God, but you don't believe in two eternal principles.
So eternal principles and it being God are completely different, right? So God has.
I don't care whether you call it God because it's still polytheism if there's two uncreated eternal principles. That's polytheism, two gods.
Well, but it's okay. So I mean, it's not God. So we would not define.
Well, you're just calling it not God, but it has the attributes of God, eternal and uncreated, but it's not God, and there's two of them. Hence, polytheism.
So God, I guess, as we would define him, is eternal and created and has all power to then bring about His desire, right? The element doesn't have power to do anything.
Well, he's not all powerful if there's another uncreated eternal thing next to him.
He has all power to bring about His desires.
So that's not all. So he's not all powerful because there's another eternal principle. You're a dualist.
So sure. I mean, I'm not gonna.
Sure. So now you admit that it is dualism. So sure.
Well, I mean, I guess I probably wouldn't have the exact definition of what you mean by dualism. I don't have that, memorized.
Well, you just said sure. I mean, so there's two eternal, uncreated principles: God and prima materia.
Sure. Fine. Yeah, that's.
Okay, so you're a dualist, and then you're a polytheist by admission. That's what dualism is defined as.
So I mean, so polytheism, right? I mean, as
two. That's poly is two at least. Is that more than one? Poly, two eternal uncreated principles. You said okay, dualism, sure. That's two. That's poly.
But I mean, so the thing is, you're using polytheism in a way that's like not used in the colloquial sense, right? So colloquially,
no, that's colloquially and definitionally in academic theology. That's literally what it means. More than one is poly. That's two. So no, it's not true. You're saying it's just total bullshit.
That's fine. I have a question for you though.
Well, I have a question for you before you ask my question. My question for you is, why do all of the texts prior to the Joseph Smith translation of Genesis, whether Protestant, Orthodox, Catholic, none of them contain the additional 11 or 12 verses of Genesis that Joseph Smith added to predict himself?
See, I think there's an issue with this, right? Because
what?
He's not adding that there, right? Like, what I mean
yes, he is adding it there. What are you talking about? What do you mean?
Let me define that. So this is like a Mike Weir brings this up. Other people try to like make this a thing where it's like, look, he wrote himself into the Bible.
Yeah, he did.
Joseph Smith right?
So your answer is to just yap around it? You're cutting out. We don't hear you.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
Uh-huh.
Okay, so I'm finding where this comes from. Because, again, if you actually look into the Latter-day Saint, scripture, you understand where this is coming from. So
I'm looking into the scripture. Come on, man. Don't give me this crap about if you actually look into it, you'll see where it's coming from. I've got it pulled up.
It comes from the Book of Mormon.
I've got it pulled up.
Yes, so it's in the Book of Mormon. So go to...
Yeah, but how am I going to follow the book? Bro, you're missing the point. Why would I follow the Book of Mormon?
I'm getting to it, right?
No, you're missing what...
The whole point is...
The Book of Mormon is bullshit. I'm not going to believe that because this is in the Book of Mormon, it should be added to the later chapters of Genesis when the entire revelation given to Jews, Christians, Orthodox, Protestants for every century prior to this con man does not have added verses predicting himself.
So, again, that's the thing, right? Then that's just like the people saying, look, atheists will say, well, people don't rise from the dead, so therefore Christianity...
That is not the same thing as the... No, it's not. It's not the same thing as the atheist objection. It is absolutely not the same as the atheist objection.
Well, if you let me finish and just not talk over me explaining where I'm going...
Because you're just going to yap, you're not going to give an answer. How is appealing to... You're appealing to the other fake thing. You're appealing to the other fake thing to prove this?
Atheists claim Christianity is fake. That doesn't mean
it is not the same as the... No, it's this total false analogy. No, it is not the same. It is not the same. So that's a fallacy to say that if an atheist makes an argument about textual corruption, that's the same as the argument that I'm making. I am not... I'm not making that argument.
You're not even letting me make my claim. You're assuming what claim I'm making before I've even made it, right? So atheists say, okay, so people don't rise from the dead, therefore there can't be a resurrection. And you say, well, look, we have evidence for the resurrection.
That is not the argument being made here. That is a totally dumb analogy.
Well, you're not letting me finish my claim.
Every text that is... All right, we're done. You're done. This is so stupid. I don't understand how anybody can believe this. It's completely stupid nonsense. This is not the same as when an atheist says that texts are corrupted or people, the New Testament writers wrote Jesus into the New Testament and they wrote and created that is not the same thing. The difference is the New Testament cites countless times in the Old Testament where Jesus fulfills those prophecies. This is totally different where you have absolutely no textual evidence at all for additional verses to the last chapter of Genesis that predict Joseph Smith. So it is totally different. No similarity at all to what the New Testament writers do. Remember when we had another Mormon that debated the same thing and he did the exact same move. He said, oh, well, the New Testament, the apostles, they just craft these verses to make Jesus be the fulfillment. No, they don't. Total nonsense. Jesus isn't just the fulfillment. He's the one that gave the Old Testament prophecies. This is totally different, where you have absolutely no textual proof or evidence prior to Joseph Smith of any of these extra verses in Genesis predicting him. It's an obvious defeater for the entire religion and proves he's a con man. So their only answer is to say, well, it's kind of like what the apostles did, where they crafted Old Testament verses to make it about Jesus. No, they're not con men like Joseph Smith. They're actually proving that Jesus fulfills the prophecies. This is so obviously a fraudulent addition to Genesis to predict Joseph Smith. Why, at the end of the book of Genesis about the death of Joseph, would there be suddenly a prediction of Joseph Smith thousands of years in the future? I mean, it's just so absurd on the face of it. It's so dumb. And it's obvious that he stuck it in here because it was talking about Joseph, and he's duping all of these low IQ, ignorant prairie muffins into thinking that it's Joseph Smith when it's talking about Joseph the patriarch. It's so obvious. I mean, it's like comedy level stuff, and this is what we're dealing with. Liam, $5. Did you say that the IMF got El Salvador to back off of Bitcoin? Back off? I don't know. I have not seen that. What does that mean? Back off of it. Its success will be down to what the international money power wants. How the international money power cannot stop what is already out there. Bearish. Looks like they're pushing to get liquidity. Who is? I don't know what you're talking about. The government is pushing Bitcoin to get liquidity to do what? Again, everybody that argues this kind of stuff is missing the whole point and idea behind Bitcoin.